It is an honor to have you on the show. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
being to come on.
Absolutely.
So, Mr. Latimore, woo, child. So much is going on. First, can you say hello to the Soul Tribe? They're excited to see you today.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to speak. Today, I do want to speak on, as you mentioned, the collapse of this U.S. empire, what it looks like. I want to talk about a brief history of how we got here, and then, of course, talk about what we can do to prepare ourselves for the future.
That sounds good. Just briefly, let's talk about who you are, Dexter. What made you get a degree in economics? I'm going to take off the screen so they can focus on your intro. Just tell a little bit about you. But you can.
Sure. So, starting out as a child, I was always interested in money because I realized very early that money answers all things, as the Bible says. Any problems that we have, or at least most of the problems that we have in life, can be pretty much resolved with money. So, as I was growing up and deciding to go to college, I told myself, and I told you as well, that first of all, debated going to college. But when I got there, I said I need to study business because money is one thing that we as a people don't know enough of. And in general, most people don't know money, don't understand the concept of money and how to utilize it in order to benefit their lives. And so I said to myself that I'm going to take the opportunity to study at the school, business and economics ultimately, because the economies are what runs the world. And if we understand what's going on in the economies of the world, then we'll be able to benefit individually and as a community.
Mm. So you decided to take do a degree in economics. What made you do a dual degree? Because your dual degree is also Pan African Studies and economics.
Yes. So I was when I was in the business school, I was one of the few African American students. And so it was important for me to have a community that looked like me as
Mhm.
well as, the importance to me of the history of the African people in Africa and abroad, the people of color abroad,
Okay.
as well as I wanted to really understand what was going on, how the world got to the position of where we are today. And things, a lot of things didn't make sense, or I'll say a lot of things were complicated in
Mhm.
terms of figuring out what exactly was going on. So I wanted to study in the school and also use the school as an opportunity to travel the world. So I started traveling the world through the school, first going to Trinidad and Tobago, and then Senegal, and then a few other countries with the school.
And then you got a specialization in international business. What led to that?
Well, my family is a family of entrepreneurs. And so I told myself I do want to do business, but not just business in America. And
That's
that
right.
is one of the things that I do want to discuss with you and your audience, the importance of not just limiting yourself to the confines of this country. We have
Mhm.
an entire globe, an entire world that is at our disposal. And when we travel to these other parts of the world, we can actually see how we can benefit ourselves and how we can be a contribution to these other countries. And so I told myself that I wanted to study international business so that when the time comes, I would be able to understand what's going on in these countries and actually benefit financially and be an impact in these countries.
Okay. So then another thing I wanted to ask is what is your relationship with Ambassador Shabazz?
Yeah, so I met Ambassador Shabazz in 2010. I took a class. She actually taught a class at the University of Louisville. And from there, we worked together, for the last 15 years. She advised me to become a Muhammad Ali scholar at the
Hmm.
time when I was in college so that we could work more directly. We worked on the Muhammad Ali Awards
Hmm.
for 3 years together. Yeah, so we did a lot of different projects together since then.
Yes. And you also traveled with her to Belize, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yes, I
Okay.
traveled, I want to say in 2012, we went to Belize with her,
And
me and the Muhammad Ali scholars, and we did some work there for a few weeks.
okay. And also, and then she just became a very integral part of our family, thanks to you. So I appreciate that. And I didn't
Absolutely.
mention that Dexter Latimore is my son. He's one
That
of
is,
8 children. So it is such a pleasure having you here, Dexter.
thank
And
you.
it's an honor and a joy. You're welcome being your mom and, just seeing your growth and your development, your love and passion for the human family all over the globe, your humanitarian work as well. I appreciate you for that. And we'll get into that a little later, but let's dive right into the topic. We are witnessing a global like experience that I never seen in my lifetime. Can you explain to us what's going on? And I mean, like, how should we be feeling? What should we do at this point? So I'm just going to be quiet and turn over to you. I'm going to put you on the screen by yourself just for a minute and I'll come back on. But I want you to share with the audience your thoughts about what's going on.
Okay, so a brief overview of what's going on right now. The U.S. government currently is in $38 trillion in debt. We also have corporate debt, which is separate from the government debt, which is about $15 trillion. We have civil debt, which is credit cards, for example. We have over $1 trillion in credit card debt. So when we look in total, we're over $50 trillion in debt, right? So that obviously causes a lot of issues. We generate as a country $5 trillion in taxes, but we spend as a country $7 trillion. So we have a $2 trillion deficit, which we have to borrow. Our expenses right now in the country per year, we have healthcare, which is about $2.5 trillion. We have Social Security, about 1.5 trillion. We have interest on debt, which is another $1 trillion, and then we have defense, which is $1 trillion. So those are just the major things that we're spending our money on.
Okay.
And at some point, you do have to pay your debts. Right? America is a debt society, right? So our system is not very productive. I would say we don't produce goods and services in an abundance here as we used to several decades ago, and so that has led to where we are today, along with the fact that we went away with the gold standard, right? So now we're looking at, initially when the country was founded, gold was about $20 an ounce.
Okay.
So we had a fixed rate of $20 an ounce for over a period of about 150 years, right? From 1792 up until about the 1900s, around 1934, right? Obviously a lot of the wars that we have fought over the years are very costly.
Right.
But the reality is, this is the way that America was able to become the superpower that it is today, is by having military dominance. But the problem with that as an empire is, how far do you stretch before it becomes too much and before the cost becomes too much? And America has found out what its limits are. And now we are at the point of contracting. All right. So America overreached its bounds in terms of trying to dominate the world.
Okay.
Right. We recently, a few years ago, obviously lost the war in Afghanistan after 20 years of fighting there. That was very costly, but it also was a trigger to the world to allow for the rest of the world to know that America is losing its power. Right. Immediately following that, we had the war in Ukraine to start, right, where this is a war where the US and NATO, which would be the European powers, came together to try to fight against Russia. America does not like the idea of there being any other superpower in the world.
Absolutely right.
And so when we actually gained our status as superpower after World War II, right?
Okay.
We supposedly won the war. We were the ones who determined the outcome of World War II. So then when the European colonial powers, being France, Britain, all of these countries, they had to pretty much concede to America as the number one dominant superpower of the world. Immediately following that, after World War II, America said, well, Russia, which actually was an ally of America during the war, became enemy number one, right? That's when we went to the Cold War. Obviously, again, wars cost money, but America said, we'll just print money, right? We went off the gold standard and we just decided to print money without actually having it being backed by anything.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we're not backed by gold, or for the time that we weren't backed by gold, the other countries of the world began to question what the US dollar was backed by. If not gold, then what?
Right.
So then we look more recently, we fast forward into the time period of BRICS, right? BRICS, you've talked about this many times, what BRICS is, but BRICS would be Brazil, Russia, China, and India, China, and South Africa. Initially, I want to say it was an economist in the early 2000s, an American economist, who wrote up a piece just describing the fact that these four countries at the time, it was BRIC. It was Brazil, Russia, India, China. They said these four economies, if they come together, they form a bigger economy than America and its allies. And so,
Right.
go ahead. Were you?
I was just saying, right. No, I agree.
And so these countries obviously got wind of this. They said, that's a great idea. And so they formed BRICS in 2013, I believe. Since then, BRICS and the rest of the world have been accumulating gold and silver.
Mm-hmm.
Since America became the superpower, they told all countries, in order to have a reserve account, a bank account, an international bank account, that you had to use the US dollar. Right. So the US dollar was the trade dollar for the world. Right. So over the past several decades, for example, China and Japan, if they wanted to do business amongst each other, they could not use their own currency. They had to use the US dollar. Right. So these countries, BRICS and other countries, have been finding new ways to circumvent the dollar. Right. So when America has other countries using its dollar, it makes the US dollar the strongest dollar in the world.
And
right?
so that what made us a superpower?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The money and the military made us a superpower.
Okay.
Right. We told other countries, you have to use our dollar.
Right. Okay.
And countries found out, it's either that or else. They found out the or else part. That's where a lot of wars happen. Russia, during the Cold War, Russia was the alternative to America. So this is when many countries around the world became communist, right? Socialist countries like Cuba, Venezuela, a lot of African countries, and a lot of the Asian countries.
Okay.
Once the Soviet Union collapsed, right, there was the Soviet Union at the time. In 1991 with the Berlin Wall, when the Berlin Wall fell, America was the only superpower, right? So it was able to enforce its will on all of these other countries. This would be why in the 1990s we had this robust era, right? A very good financial decade. But of course, um, problems caught up with America by 2000, right? And we
Mhm.
had the dot-com bust, right? We had a lot of financial issues, and really America's financial house has not been in order for the last 25 years. There's a concept in economics called kick the can down the road.
I was just about to ask you about that because I remember you talking about that in your early years of college. Yes.
Yeah, when I was in college and I was reading about different financial issues, it uh, a lot of times they would say in the books, they would say, well, we'll just pass these problems off to our children and our grandchildren.
Oh my
Don't
God.
worry about the problems, just let them worry about it.
Mm,
Well, we are the children and grandchildren who have to worry about those problems, right?
mhm.
And so now we're looking at, we have a homeless rate that is hasn't been as in my lifetime. I haven't seen a homeless rate at this proportion. We have people living in their cars. We
Mhm.
have businesses shutting down, jobs being cut. In this year alone, we've had over 1 million job cuts. Right. Again, I mentioned that America is no longer a productive country. We don't produce goods and services. We are now a financial uh, economy.
And you
We
told me
have
we're consumers, but go ahead.
absolutely. We
Mhm.
are 100% consumers, but we don't produce anything. Right.
Mm,
During our times of prosperity,
mhm,
America shipped the factories abroad, right,
mm.
for a few reasons. One being for cost cutting reasons, also being because when you're an empire, you don't want to do things, you want other people to do things for you.
Right.
Right. So America consumed everything, and everybody in the world fronted the bill. Right.
Mm,
Everybody in the world paid for America's consumption. But now the day of reckoning is upon us.
mm. Can I pause right there? Speaking of the day of reckoning is upon us. You are the generation that has to deal with all these problems now. You said in college they were saying we're kicking the can down the road, and now here we are. You are that generation. How do you feel being a part of that generation? And what are your thoughts about that?
Well, mixed feelings, mixed emotions. I always had some issues with the fact that America was the bully of the world. Right. Fairness is important. Right. Other countries should not be forced to take on America's burden. Right. So now we're reaching a point where these countries are being freed from the oppression, basically, of the American empire. Right.
Mm,
So while that will lead to and is leading to some suffering in America, there is still optimism. Right.
okay.
Because um, in America, we have been socialized into being individualistic.
Hmm.
Well, that can work only to an extent. At a certain time in life, you realize that you need others, right? And so we in America have to accept and acknowledge the reality that we need others, right?
Hmm.
Fortunately, many of us have families, right? This is now more than ever is a very important time for us to connect with our families, our friends, our communities, and find ways to help each other. Right. Um, this is not the first empire to collapse,
Okay.
and even when this empire collapses, the country will still be here.
Oh, wait a minute,
Right.
wait a minute, wait a minute. But aren't is the you said the empire is collapsing, but the country will still be here. Is there a difference?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. It's
Okay.
just like when we look at the Roman Empire, right, 2,000 years ago, the Roman Empire was most of Europe, right? But the country of Rome is the boot that we see in Europe, right? So when the Roman Empire collapsed, it contracted into the landmass that the
Mm,
people originally were from.
okay.
Similar situation here in America. The American empire is not just the four corners of this country, right? The
Mm-hmm.
American empire spans way past our borders.
Okay.
But the American country is different. Even the American country is different than the American corporation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So um, people know of America as the corporation and confuse that with the country. Right. This
Yes.
is yeah. This corporation was founded, right. But before the founding of the corporation, the landmass was here, and there
Right.
were people still here.
You know, I noticed that when we were traveling abroad to Africa, they around the 2000s, the early 2000s, people were calling it the US, United States. And when I was growing up, we only called the country America. So that's when I started realizing there's a difference between the United States Incorporated, a corporation, and the landmass of the country. And I think people think that, they're one and the same. So I appreciate you for explaining that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what we need now, as you have been promoting in your channel, is the community. And it's a beautiful thing to see the community that you are building and that you have built, because again, this is needed, right? We need to find ways to impact our community in a positive way, right?
Mhm.
There are ways, again, in terms of helping ourselves, right? The individual person come together as a family. We need to look and observe other groups that come to America, how they are successful.
Mhm.
Because when we look at the Chinese, the Asian population, or the Mexicans, the Hispanic population, when they come here, they will come and move in one house,
Yeah.
several families. And a lot of times, Americans, we say, I don't want to give up my freedom. And understandable, but there's a cost to that, right?
Yes,
There's a
sir.
cost to everything in life. And we have to understand the costs and find ways to cut costs, right?
Mm.
So, again, why do they decide to move in? We've seen, obviously, if a Mexican family moves into a house in a few years, they could very easily own the block because they will move in several families, pay off that house in a
Mm.
very short time, and we'll have an agreement that once we buy this house, we're going to buy the next house for the next family, right? So there are strategies that we can use in order to come together and to be prosperous, even in times of
Mm.
downturns and collapses, which we are in and seeing now.
Yes. So before we get into more of the solutions, is there anything else you want to say about this empire collapse?
Um, well, I want to actually look at how the empire was created, right?
Mm. Mm.
1776, we
Okay.
started the American Revolution. This was against, right? We were fighting against the British Empire at the time. And the
Okay.
irony of it all is that we were opposing taxes, right? So we had the Boston Tea Party, right, where we opposed the taxes, and we fought the war. 1792 is when we went from the British pound being in use in America to the US dollar. That's when the US dollar was created, right?
Okay.
Dollars and currencies are essentially IOUs from
Mm.
the bank. So the bank, at the time of the founding of the country, if you had a $20 bill, you could go to the bank and redeem that $20 bill for an ounce of gold, right? Over the years, America got a little clever, right, and said, "We'll confiscate your gold, right? We'll hold your gold for you. We'll hold your silver for you. We'll put it in our banks, right?" And also, it was the reason that we use paper currency is because of the weight, right? It's easier to
I
do
see.
transactions and transport as opposed to gold and silver and other precious metals.
Okay.
So we have what 1913 when the Federal Reserve System was created.
Yes.
Around that time, they were confiscating gold, right? Taking the citizens' gold, right? There was a time in the American history where gold owning and possessing gold was illegal, right? They made it illegal to own gold. So that shows the importance of the asset of gold, right? It
Right.
is so valuable that always banks want it, right? But also it's it has practical use, right? You can use gold in production, right? Obviously as jewelry, but also in the airplanes, in the phones, in a lot of the technology that we use, gold is used, right? There's also a fixed amount of gold, right? It's not infinite. This is the
Mm.
reason why there's a set price.
Okay.
And when the demand is high, the higher the demand, the higher the price for the gold,
Okay.
right? So we're looking right now today at a time where gold is in high demand.
Mm.
This is
Very.
the reason, right? This is the reason why the gold prices right now are at what, around $4,300
Yes.
an
I'll bring
ounce.
it to you. Here it is right
Yeah.
here. $43. And let me see if it came up. Oh, it was just 4,369, and then it popped up 4,371 right here.
Yes.
Can you
And
see
it
it
will, yes, I
on
can.
your end?
And it's projected to go
Okay.
up next year. Um, because again, the economies of the world, the governments of the world are rushing to gold, right? All of these countries are
Can you stop?
currently, I'm sorry, say it
Speaking
again.
of gold, I was just saying, speaking of gold, you were saying these countries are rushing towards gold. So I want to encourage the Soul family to consider what he's saying, because if countries and banks are rushing to gold, that means that we should be preparing and getting gold. So let me pause here to say, if anybody is interested in getting gold, then you can contact our affiliate, Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company, for silver and gold, and contact them at 952-929-7006, or send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. And of course, let them know you heard about it from Dr. Kia Pruitt, and you'll get a great price for your product. So you were talking about the issue of gold and why gold's prices are rising.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, so gold obviously is an important asset. It's an important asset to add to your wealth portfolio, as you were just mentioning, right? And we, as a people, all people, we need to understand the difference between wealth and riches,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Riches can be lost uh, overnight.
Mm,
Wealth is accumulated over time, right? Um, we have to understand the difference between spending and investing. Right?
okay.
Spending is something that you do short term. It brings short term gratification versus investing. You invest in the future. You invest long term. Right. So when you buy gold and silver, for example, you're not buying this in order to exchange it the next day or the next month. You're buying it in order to hold because it has a stored value. It has value in it. And these are things that you will be able to pass down to your children and to your grandchildren. And this is what is considered wealth.
You know, Andy Scheckman, the CEO of Miles Franklin, taught me that, because I kept calling silver and gold an investment, because I come from a background where, you invest in things like this. And he said, you have to stop looking at it as an investment and look at silver and gold as wealth, because this is something you pass down to your posterity, your future generations. So I appreciate you for reiterating that.
Absolutely. It's also, I'll say, it's also important to look at different businesses that are needed, right? When
Mhm.
we look into the future, we have to say, what first of all, looking at the present, what's going on right now, and then projecting into the future, what can I see that will be needed in the future?
Okay.
Right? We have to learn to be more productive as a society, as a community, and as individuals.
Thank you so much. Yeah, because you had said earlier that even as a country, we don't produce anything. We
Right.
consume, and expect everybody to cater to our needs. And I think that has trickled down to us as individuals.
Yes.
And one principle you taught me and the church that you were heading at the time you had Christ Conscious Community International was that most people plan for the weekend. Do you want to finish that sentence for me?
Yes. We'll say I'll use the term successful and non-successful, right?
Okay. Okay.
Or we'll say most people
Okay.
plan for the weekend. Successful people plan for a lifetime,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So we all do know that or expect at some point we will have an expiration date physically.
right.
So the day will come, but are we prepared for that day? Are we
Mm.
prepared? Do we have a plan, right, for the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 20, 50 years?
And then
Because if
but you told us that I want you to go because you told us when in the church in your sermon, you said, and then some of you will only stop at a 5, 10-year, 50-year plan, whereas successful people, and I'll let you say the rest.
yeah, let's look at Japan has a 1,000-year plan, right?
Mm,
So we're looking at you can plan for your life, which is great. You can also plan for the lives of your children and your grandchildren.
mm,
Now, we don't know exactly what that may look like, right, when we're not here, but the more you plan, the more you prepare, the better of a structure and a path that you can leave to your posterity, to your children and your children's children. Right. And again, this is how successful people operate. We look
mm,
at the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. They have plans, right?
mm.
They write out strategic plans for not just themselves and their lives and their careers, but for the children's children's children. And
Wow.
when you think like that, then you start to even make better and more sound decisions for yourself in the right now.
Mm. Speaking of that, the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people. I remember walking into the bank once. You and I, for those of you who are just joining in, Dexter Latimore is an economist, a worldwide traveler, a speaker, a former pastor. He writes. He's a musician, and he's going to be working on a book on economics. But he's also my son. But when you were in college, we walked into a bank together, and there were some suckers that were there. And you said to me, Mom, look at that. And I was like, yeah, I'll take a cherry sucker. And you said, I want you to look at what you just called that, a sucker. And then I
Uh,
want you to look at the name of the sucker.
Dumb dumb.
So you blew my mind away. What was the significance in suckers being at the bank and the name of the suckers being called dum dums?
Well, ironically, the banks and the government, they're comical, they enjoy a good laugh, right? So the banks, they consider those who deposit their money into the banks as dummies, as fools, as suckers, because they don't realize that once you put your money in the bank does what it will with your money, right? And the banks legally only have to have 10% of what they claim in their accounts. They only have to keep 10% of that, right? So if you deposit $100 into the bank, they'll keep 10 in there. They'll invest the other 90, right? So the bank is making money off of your money. This is the reason why they consider us dum dums if we're putting our money in their banks.
That's deep. And when you told me that, that made me made me think about doing more research. And I did realize that once you turn over your money to the bank, actually, they can say they own it. Like you are the creditor. So you're lending your money as a creditor to them to do whatever they will. And they
Yeah.
can invest that money somewhere. If they get in trouble, they can do bail-ins. And I was like, oh my God. And Dexter, that just opened my mind up to this whole world of self-preservation, having your own bank, your own family bank, having your own trust to protect your assets. So I'm so grateful that you went into economics. I would have never thought this way had you not, gone into that field of study.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you. And as you mentioned earlier, for yourself, you said that the information and knowledge that you have is not just for you. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously felt the same way growing up and still do today. I didn't gain this information because I wanted to hoard the information to myself to gain wealth only for myself. I wanted this information because I understood that the vast majority of the world does not understand what we're talking about. Right. And so if the world doesn't understand what's going on, then how can they prosper? Right. And so this is the reason why we do not have as much prosperity in the world as what could be possible. Right. And this is the reason why it's important to gain the information, but then also to distribute the information to others, because one person having the knowledge does not benefit the collective. And we have to begin to think more collectively and less individualistic.
Yeah, I agree with that. And now that we have this information, I spend a lot of time, as you know, with all of the children, my grandchildren, teaching these principles. And speaking of banking, the other day I was going past the bank to deposit something to pay a bill. And Amin and Mia were with me, the two grandchildren. You all soul family, you've met them. They were asking me, Mia said, Granny, why do you people put your money in the banks? You people, right? And so I'm gonna say, yeah, that's the dumbest thing in the world. You turn over your money to strangers. Do you know those people? I said, Granny, you know. I was like, well, I've come to know them. No, do you know those people? I said, no. Granny, why do you people put your money in the banks? And they were just having this conference. I couldn't answer it. They said, steal your money. You don't know them. They could use. I said, well, I think there are laws in place to protect. They said governments break laws all the time. That's what you've been teaching us.
Right.
And I thought, wow, from the mouths of babies.
Exactly. That's the irony of it all. As a child, a lot of things that the adults did when we were children just didn't make sense. But as we get older, we become adults. We learn certain things, right? We're taught certain things, and we accept these things to be truth. And so when you talk to an average child, they might just ask you, why are you handing over your money to people that you don't know? And it's a very credible question that often we don't have answers to, except that we were told by somebody to do it. And so we do.
And I'm an educator teaching my grandchildren to think for themselves, the importance of critical thinking, the importance of having your own family bank, the importance of gold and silver. And they're like, okay, you're teaching us one thing, but then you're putting your money in the bank to these strangers. Wow.
And see, now,
go ahead.
We have to talk about the education system, right? Because the educational system is not necessarily to educate, but to train the people to be good workers, right? To accept instructions. And so we're not being educated to be thinkers, right? They don't want dynamic thinkers, right? Thinkers are not good in terms of controlling. And when you're talking about controlling the population of the world and the population of our country. So they don't want us to be educated. In fact, we look at the education in America, it has gone down substantially over the last several decades. And it's still like, it's even worse today than it was when I was a child in school. And so we have to really consider educating our children, even if we have them in public schools. There is a time when they are outside of schools that as parents, we have to be, and grandparents and aunts and uncles, we have to be investing time in our children because they are our future. Absolutely. Right? These children who are in high school today, we have a lot of children today who cannot read at grade level. They will in a few years be the workers. Right? These are the ones that we will, as we age, we will have to depend on them as a society. All right. So it's going to be advantageous for us to invest now. Right. Consider these things now so that 10, 20, 50 years from now, when we're old and cannot provide for ourselves, we have an adequate population who can do so.
Speaking of the education system, I'm going to have a special guest tomorrow who has educated her son from the time he was in her womb. And when the child came out, well, the child in her womb told her what his name was going to be. So when she delivered the child, she had the child and named it exactly what the child told her in a dream. And she started educating him actually from the womb and then afterwards. And the child now is 8 and has skipped 2 grades in school and could skip more, but they won't allow for it. He's a brilliant child. And I asked her to come on my show tomorrow morning to discuss the importance of educating your own children. So I thank you for even mentioning that. And maybe briefly, you can talk about your own educational experience and how your family, not only you had experience in public schools, what that was like, and then your family brought you out of public schools, right? But
Yes,
before you
absolutely.
do that, I just want to tell the family, if you're enjoying the show and you appreciate Dexter Latimore, who is an economist, world traveler, speaker, author, and he was actually mentored by Malcolm X's eldest daughter. Is it Atala Shabazz?
Yes.
You just
Atala
call
Shabazz.
huh? What is it?
Atala Shabazz.
I call her Shabazz, but I call her Ambassador Shabazz or Sis. If you're interested in supporting this work, then this is something I do for all of my guests. You can kindly send a blessing or support donation to Cash App Dex Latimore, Cash App DEXLATTIMORE. And he'd appreciate that. And then when he writes his book, we'll bring him back on as well to talk to us about global economics, and et cetera. So Dexter, your educational experience, what was that like?
Yes. So I was very fortunate to grow up in the family that I come from. When we were being born, my aunt, my father's sister, created first a daycare, right? She had a degree in business as well, right? She had a master's degree in business. And so she said that since we are having children, I'm going to create a daycare and I will make sure to take care of our children. And then also she hired the family in order to take care of the children. As we got older, she said, well, the children are now out of daycare. Some of them are out of daycare age. I'm going to found a school. So she created a school for us, right? Student Aspect Preparatory School was the name of our school.
And we had a creed at the school too. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, the Creed by Marva Collins. Yes, this is actually the foundation for me in terms of my education in Pan-African Studies history, because a lot of the things that I learned I'll say I learned in college, I had gained a lot of that information in my aunt's school, our Aunt Darlene. So.
And wait a minute. And what was the book? One of the first books you read at 8 years old at her school? And I'll be quiet.
No, I got to remember what Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yep.
Yes. Yes. Because again, I was seeing as a family 2 different dynamics.
Okay.
All right. I was seeing entrepreneurship and creation, but I was also seeing the other side where money was not being held and being passed down generationally. So I said, okay, what's the difference in these dynamics? And so as a child, I was at Aunt Darlene's house and Uncle David's house at the time. And I believe Uncle David had the book. And so I picked it up, inquiring. And so he told me to take the book.
Mm-hmm. And
So
you were
8.
Were you 8?
8 or 9. Around,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it was information that intrigued me. Also, at the time, my father, he taught us music. He taught us how to play instruments. So by 10 years old, I was making money, as a musician. But I didn't want to blow my money even as a child. I said, okay, what can I buy? How can I use this money to help the
Mm.
family, to help my own situation, right? So when I would buy clothes, I didn't buy Jordans, right? Because I said I'm gonna buy my own shoes, but they're not gonna be Jordans. I can't afford that, and I'm not gonna spend all my money on one pair of shoes,
Mhm.
right? So I started early, bargain shopping, right? I don't want, if I see a pair of shoes at $69 and then I see a sale at the same store that says two for 69, I want the two for 69 or two for 79, right? I'll take that deal. You know, at the time I will go to Foot Locker. They'll have t-shirts 4 for 20. Well, I can buy one shirt with a logo for $25, or I can buy 4 or 5 regular shirts for $20. Right?
Mm.
These principles are what led me to down the road to becoming the man that I am today. Right? And this is the reason why I often stress the importance of budgeting.
Mm.
Right? A lot of people don't know where their money goes at the end of pay, the pay period. And so I advise your viewers to write up a budget, right?
Mm.
First, write how much you make,
Okay.
and then write down all of your expenditures, what all your expenses are, and include everything. Be
Mm.
honest with yourself,
Mm.
right? So that you can look and analyze and understand exactly where your money is going, to the cent, to the dollar, as specific as possible you want to be when writing this, right? That's check number one,
Okay.
right? On the second check, 2 weeks later, you get paid. Do the same thing. All right. Do
Mm.
it for several checks, because you want to really analyze, because the first time you write it, it's an estimate. The second time you write it, you're getting more information and you're actually observing every time you spend. All
Mm.
right. And the longer you do this, the more you do this, each check that you do this with, you're going to even be hesitant about spending. You're going to say, I want to hold that $20, right? And this is how you learn to invest, right? You have to save your money first before you can invest, right? But if you can find $1 there, $10 there, it actually adds up, and it can add up fast, right?
Mm.
So again, budget your money, because you will find that it helps, right? It helps to have a savings, right? Back in our grandmother's days, they would
Mm.
say they would have a rainy day fund. Today in America, over half of the population doesn't have $1,000
Yeah. Wow.
after their bills. That's a problem, right? Because many of us are one sickness or one heartache, one problem away, one bill away from a domino effect happening in our financial lives. And this is how a lot of people end up homeless today, right?
Mm.
One bill. First is the electricity, right? It's winter, it's cold, electricity goes up. Well, everybody's living paycheck to paycheck today,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if that bill goes up $50, your job is not going to give you 5 extra hours so that you can cover that bill. So then it goes from the electricity to then the food, right? If you have food in your refrigerator, if your electricity gets cut off, all that food goes bad, right?
Mm.
And then the gas, right? You got to afford gas to go to work.
Yeah.
All of this is a cascading effect. Then it hits your rent. You're late on rent. Once you're late on rent, it's hard to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people now are, again, living in their cars
Mm.
because these things happen, right? And if you're not preparing for worst case scenarios, then should it happen, you're unprepared, and you're just going to reap whatever the consequences are, right? In life, I often say life is really simple. For me, this is the way I look at it, my perspective. Decisions, consequences.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That's it. Whatever decisions you make in life, there will be consequences. Not acting is acting, right? Not making a decision is a decision. And so when whatever happens to you happens, if you're unprepared because you didn't make a choice or a decision, you said, I'm going to sit on my hands, well, life will hit, all right? This is the reason why I say invest in yourself, right? Education. People told me, a few people told me growing up when I was in college, they said, go ahead and get your degree, right? Because 5 years from now, you'll be 25, degree or not. If you use your degree, no problem. If you don't use your degree, you can put it in your back pocket, may never need it, but you'll be 25 one day, you'll be 35, you'll be 50, right? But if you don't prepare, if you don't plan and strategize, then when it comes, it'll come and go and it will hit you over the head. And life is not always gracious, right? Again, we're living in the time of the collapse of an empire. So times are hard now. We should expect and prepare for times to be harder. It's great to want and to expect that things will get better, and one day they will, but we don't know when it will happen.
Can I say something right quick, son?
Absolutely.
More. You said life happens, and some people are saying some things you can't plan for, like a hurricane, like the collapse of the empire. So what do you say to that? And I'm going to leave time for question and answers too, but what do you say to that? They're saying some things you can't prepare for.
That's true. That's why I say prepare for the unexpected. Something you never know what's going to happen in life. So now, obviously, like you said, it's hard to predict a hurricane or a tsunami or a tornado, whatever, any type of exactly. But now you can predict a collapse, especially if you're paying attention, right? There are things that you can control. There are controllables and non-controllables.
Okay.
Control what you can control, and then be prepared, but don't worry about things that are out of your control. Right now, this is where we go into the spiritual aspect of things. If you believe in a higher power, at times in life, you have to leave things to the higher power and expect that things will be okay. But worrying about things doesn't change anything. All right. So you prepare for what you can. And I say, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Be prepared, because whatever happens, it's going to happen to you.
I remember you were saying, life happens, things happen, and yes, things are going to get better. And I remember telling you, like, before, like around 2017, I was like, oh, we don't have to worry about everything. NASARA's coming, National Economic Security and Reformation Act, and the global version of that, just SARA is going to happen. We're all going to be wealthy. All the debts are going to be paid. We're going to have a wonderful jubilee. And I'm like, Trump is going to save the world. And I'm just, happy. And you said, Mom, I study economics. I appreciate the fact that you're positive. I study economics and I foresee a collapse. We are going to have to prepare for things getting worse before they get better. I remember you saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Then a couple years later, it started getting worse and worse and worse. And then we had 2020, we had a global shutdown, right?
Yep.
And you said, had you not been prepared, we would have been struggling. But I told you things were going to get worse before they got better. It just so happened that we all moved in together because we were talking about, things could get worse. We all moved in together. We started saving money. We didn't have to pay all these different rents and mortgages. Dad had a house. Okay. We started pulling our resources, our money. I started getting that's when I started getting into silver and gold. And, we just started making decisions based on what you had learned in economics. So I'm very grateful that you kept me grounded. You know,
Absolutely.
I'm a very joyful, positive person, but you said, Mom, you got to be grounded, realistic, and you also said you can predict what happens in the future based on what happened in the past, and you are also studying history as well as economics.
Right. They say if you don't know history, then you're bound to make the same mistakes as before.
Yes.
So for one, you can assess where things are headed if you know the history of how we got to the present, right?
Yeah.
Past, present, future.
Mm.
A lot of times people want to look at the future with no understanding of how we got to where we are. So
Right.
whatever your expectation of the future is ill-informed or misinformed.
Mm.
All right. Let's go down the road of what if things happen the way that you said, right? Everybody's prosperous. Wonderful. But what happens, right? What happens to people who win the lottery
Oh, they usually lose it.
in a matter of under 3 years, generally?
Gosh. Okay.
What happens to professional athletes that come across millions of dollars who have no education in money? They
They
lose it.
lose it.
They end up right back in the projects often. Well, I mean, unfortunate, but it is what it is. They end up right back living with their mama. They have to sell their, because when you don't understand money, then you waste it.
Hey, what's wrong with living with your mama? No, I'm just kidding.
Nothing, nothing at all. I love my mama. I enjoyed the times when I lived with my mama. But at
Welcome.
at a certain point in life, you do want to have things of your own, especially if you ran across several millions of dollars.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's when you don't want to live with your mama, when you
Right.
burnt all of your money. But right, so people are, if you don't know money, then you're going to spend it frivolously,
Okay.
just like the athletes do. They get the money and they spend the money before the season starts. A
So you
lot of
said
the go ahead.
what happened if everybody became wealthy and prosperous during that time? Like I said.
They would lose their money
Mm.
because they would spend it on things that are don't have the proper value. People weren't going to invest in gold and silver at the time. Do you expect?
No, no, not before the collapse. Nobody was talking about it.
Exactly. So how would they have spent their money?
Mm. They would have been wasting it like we did with a lot of people did with stimulus checks. Some did pay their
Part
bills, but a lot of them, you know, stimulus
party. Mm-hmm.
and those other checks that they gave to businesses. I forgot the name of those checks.
PPP loans.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Blow it. We blowed our money. And the thing is, okay, if you get $1 million, immediately your mentality changes, your perspective changes,
Mm.
right? But who you are, your spending habits don't change.
Mm.
But now your desires increase. You get $1 million, you don't want a Toyota Camry. You want a Ferrari. Because in your mind you can afford it. $500,000 on that. You want a house, not a $200,000 house. You want $1 million house or better. So you're spending all of this money, and then you realize that you already spent it all. And then you end up losing it all because most people are not buying things outright.
Right.
Even
Right.
rich people,
Mm.
right? They'll get a car and a house on a loan and have to pay 5 years on that car, 30 years on the house. What happens if you run into hard times 3 years into your car note?
Mm.
Well, the car dealership's not going to say we understand that you're having hard times. They might give you a month or maybe up to 3 months, but eventually they're going to come calling. They're going to say, look, we're going to collect on that car.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to kick you out of that house. The bank will repossess the house.
Mm.
And so a lot of times in life, God gives us what we need.
Mm.
America has to go through its day of reckoning. America can't just be the way that it dominated the world through its military.
Mm.
The country, in my eyes, cannot just turn around and reap prosperity, even its citizens. Because the scriptures say the sins of the father will be visited on the children. And so this is just reality, right? But now, again, we can prepare ourselves. I saw one of the commentators mention copper. Copper is obviously a sound investment, right? Copper is used in many ways, right? There is, again, a fixed amount of every resource, every asset. There is an amount in the grounds, whether we're talking about copper, gold, silver, oil, whatever. And then there's an amount that we take out of the ground, and that fixed amount is going to determine the prices, right? And if everybody's grabbing for these resources, there's a high demand. You want to find things to invest in when the demand is not necessarily high, right? You know, if you buy at the peak, then it's hard to gain any value, right? You could lose value when you're buying things at the peak. So let's look at Bitcoin, for example. If you bought Bitcoin, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yes, before you get into some of the solutions and Bitcoin, I just want to say, family, if you are enjoying this podcast by economist Dexter Latimore, then please feel free to support him by sending him a donation to $Dex Latimore. This is something I do for all of my guests because I appreciate them being on here. And I have people that have degrees and, you know, world-renowned speakers, and I should be paying them to come onto the show. But this is my way to contribute back for them, sharing their knowledge and experiences. He is an economist. He has a degree in economics, Pan-African studies, and a specialization in international business. He is mentored by Ambassador Atala Shabazz, who is the eldest daughter of Malcolm X. He has traveled with and spoken to and worked with many chiefs, presidents, queens, and kings. They have them still in Africa, all over the globe, actually. And he's done some work he hasn't even spoken of, as he has worked with certain chiefs. He's also worked with the mayor from the city that he came from in Louisville, Kentucky, the former mayors. And he has a wealth of knowledge, and he's sharing that information with us on the collapse of the empire called the United States Incorporated and what we can do to prepare ourselves as we are experiencing that collapse. He is currently working on a book, and he'll talk about that maybe at another time. But if you want to support his work, then please feel free to do so. You can send a donation to $Dex Latimore. He's also a very, very renowned musician. If you notice that name, Latimore, that name is there for a reason. It's because all the Latimores are some type of entertainers, worldwide entertainers. And yes, excuse me, I was lucky enough to marry into that family. He is related to those Latimores. And so that's it, family. Thank you so much for supporting us. I'm going to turn it back over to Dexter. So go ahead, Dexter.
Yes, I was mentioning you don't want to buy things at its peak, right? That's the reason why researching before you invest is critical, right? Don't just take people's word for it, right? Don't just listen to a video, watch a couple of things on YouTube and on TV and just invest blindly. All right. That's what a lot of people have been doing with the cryptocurrencies. And you can get lucky, but your luck can very quickly and easily run out. Right. And if you don't know when to invest, where to invest, how to invest, and for how long to invest in certain products, you can lose a lot. Right. So again, right now, Bitcoin is down. You know, actually, I want to say it's down year over year. The prices that it started out as this year compared to where it's at today.
Okay.
But most certainly, it's down from its peak. Right. The high was 120,000, and right now, I want to say it's last I checked, it was about 89,000. So if you bought at the peak, you would have lost all of your money. Right? If you bought it when it was 120,000, you would have lost all your money. You also have to be skeptical of what you're investing in, because everything is not sound money. Everything is not necessarily a sound investment. So Bitcoin, if you believe in Bitcoin, fine, no problem. But you do have to understand that Bitcoin is not the same as a hard asset, right? It's not the same as gold and silver. It's not even the same as a stock in a company, because the companies that we have stocks in generally have some type of value, right? The only value that Bitcoin has right now is the value of imagination. People believe that it's valuable, and so people are investing their money. But there is a term called revaluation, where people look at what they're investing in and say, hey, does this actually have value? And even if it has value, how much value does it actually have? Looking at the AI bubble is what they're calling it right now, the AI bubble. It started out as a wonderful idea, right? AI is going to shoot the world up, shoot the economy up, change the lives of everybody. And so trillions of dollars have been injected into these AI companies. But these companies are currently not producing trillions of dollars in revenue. They're barely producing billions. So if they're getting trillions of dollars and only outputting a few billion, then that's a big discrepancy. And so the shareholders start to call into question, how valuable is this company right now, not 10 years from now? And so we could easily see next year, from the start of next year, the quick fall of a lot of these stocks. However, that being said, we do have to realize that stocks do still have some value, right? So that's the AI stocks. We have stocks like Walmart, Nike, Kroger. They have stocks. They do produce, right? They produce goods. We don't produce nearly as many goods as we used to produce, right? We were an overproducer. We had a net export decades ago. Now we are a net importer of goods.
Okay.
So just to again reiterate, don't buy at the peak, right? Study any investment before you make the investment, because you don't want to be in the position of blaming others when you lose whatever you invested in.
I remember when I was thinking about investing, because I was totally new to this in my late 40s when I was first thinking about this. I asked you, what should I invest in? And you told me, as an economist, Mom, I'm going to tell you what the things that you said you have to invest in, what you understand, right? That after you've done your research, and what you can afford. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
Absolutely. That's the I agree with whoever said that, is what I said.
That was you.
Oh, okay. Well, I agree.
You told me that.
Yes. Yeah, no, right now, gold is unaffordable to a lot of people. So you don't want to be discouraged because you cannot afford the price of gold today. You find the things that you can invest in, right? Looking at copper, again, as was mentioned. There are things, looking at asset stocks, right? Like gold stocks, silver stocks, silver mining companies, right? There are ways to invest. You just have to research first. And then you find those things that you can afford. Because again, investing is has risk involved, right? In business, you're always dealing with risk. Business and investment is all about risk and risk management, right? You want to be able to decrease the possibility of risk, and you do that by having adequate information and then doing what you are able to afford, right? Investing in what you're able to afford. But again, there are several types of investment. The first being, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, you're getting into solutions now, how to deal with this collapse. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the first investment has to be investing in yourself,
Mm, okay.
right? If you had, you say you get all of this, accumulate all of this wealth, and say you do well with it, because of first you invest in yourself, your own information, your own knowledge, but you also invest in your children, because if you have all of this is what happened to the African American community 150 years ago,
Mm,
right? When we left the South,
okay.
a
Talk about
lot of the children during the Great Migration to the North,
it. Hmm.
the children said, I don't want to live in the South. I don't care about my parents and grandparents' land.
Mm,
Sold the land for pennies, moved to Detroit, to New York, to Philly, to all of these wonderful northern cities and states because there were factory jobs there. Right. So they said, I want money. I don't care about the land. Well, clearly, they didn't understand the value of the land that their parents understood. So
okay.
again, you invest in yourself, your own knowledge and information, but you had better invest in your children and grandchildren's information because they could squander the wealth not understanding what they're doing. And
Mm,
then when it's gone, you can't turn around and say, hey, I want that back. No, it's mine now. You
mm,
can buy it for 10x the price that you sold it to me for, but you can't afford it now.
mm. So what happened when they sold the land and went to the north? And I mean, didn't they make money? They made money. So what was the
They
problem?
made money and they also realized now they have rent to pay. Now you leave a certain area and you go to a more expensive area, right?
Mm,
And this is the reason why prices go up in cities, for example. If there's a rush to the city,
mm-hmm,
then you're still competing for the same amount of goods in the
mm,
city, right? So, for example, you move to Detroit, the population was 1 million, it shoots up to 3 million. Well, there weren't 3 million new homes built,
mm,
right? There were probably the same million homes that you moved to, whether it's apartments and houses or whatever. There's a fixed amount. So if the price of those apartments, for example, were $500 and everybody, the million people in the population were competing for those homes, the
mm-hmm,
moment more people comes, that is a scarcity, right? Because
mm,
it's a fixed amount of properties. So now the demand for those properties goes up. This is again the reason why I say understanding money and economics is important. We live in it, but we don't understand it. And so
mm,
we don't understand why rent goes up in certain cities at certain time periods, right? During the COVID situation, why was rent and mortgages going up, the cost of everything going up? Well, because there were a lot of foreign investors as well as corporate investors like BlackRock, right? Buying up everything. And once you buy up half of the houses, now the rest of the population is competing for the other half.
mm.
And so now there's a scarcity in supply and an abundance in demand, which means that the prices are going to go up. All that to say, invest in self, because you can have everything and be a fool, and a fool with money is still a fool.
Oh, you said you so taught me something the other day, and you've been saying this all your life, but you reiterated. You said, "Mom, there's a principle that the wealthy people have, and that is never." It was either you or Doug's. Never sell.
Never sell the land.
Yes, yes,
Mm-hmm.
you said that. And you
Mm-hmm.
said if you invest in land, you have a home, you can build on the land, and you can grow your own food, you can do your own business. That is considered a hard asset.
Absolutely, it's considered the most important
Okay.
asset is
Mm,
land,
mm,
because from the land comes all of the resources. All right, so you don't get gold and silver and copper and oil without the land. but you also don't get a roof.
Right.
All right. So it's definitely land is the most important asset because even again, there's a scarcity of land. There is a fixed amount of land. Right.
Mm.
So you would do good to own you a square.
So I'm going to go. I want you to talk even more about solutions, because we talked about different solutions as we see this empire collapse. But before we get into those, is there anything else you want to say about this collapse? For example, is it affecting the world or is it just affecting us? And anything else you want to say about it?
It's affecting the world for sure because the world is tied into the dollar and the American economy, and the American government. So everybody does. It's a sticky situation. All right, everybody's got some aspect that this will affect them in, but also other nations are preparing. Right, they're
Mhm.
strategizing. They're trying to remove the risk of the collapse because everybody in the world foresees it. The governments do, at least. The people may not understand it. That's fine. The governments understand what's going on and they're preparing themselves.
Mm.
So yes, so now then one of the again going back to one of the ways to prepare yourself, travel outside of the country so that you can see what's going on in the rest of the world.
Mm.
Right? Be a part of the international community.
Mm.
Don't just limit yourself to the confines of this country. Right? There are many people. There is a such thing as expatriation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? People do leave America and find that life in other countries is good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? Uh, there's also different things and different ways to invest that you may find in other countries that you will never have access to or the knowledge of only being here in America. So I say travel the world, right? Again, invest in yourself, invest in your knowledge, but invest in the experiences, right? Life is all about the experience.
Yeah, and you were saying invest in yourself, like for example, with education. And I remember telling people my children are going to college, and people were saying, "Well, college is too unaffordable. How will you do that? You have lots of children." But we, as a community and as a family, just instilled within you all, you're going to succeed and you're going to get scholarships.
Mm-hmm.
And we made sure
Mm-hmm.
that happened. Academic scholarships.
Yeah.
We poured into our children the knowledge and information that we had, and we had that expectation that you're going to college. Not that college is for everybody, or you're going to get a trade or something, but you're going to do that, and you are going to get scholarships based on the intelligence and academic acumen that you have,
Yes. Scholarships and grants.
and
Right.
grants.
Money is out there for education, right? If you choose to go the institutional route of education.
Mm.
And a lot of times people, as you mentioned, feel like they have to go into debt in order to get the education. But there
Mm.
are different ways. You may not have had the GPA required to get certain scholarships and grants, but write a letter, right? Find what grants are there. Google different types of grants and scholarships that are available for you. Find out what you can get a scholarship for, whether it's being a woman, being an African American, being a minority, going into business, going into health, whatever industry you go into, there are different scholarships and grants specific to those categories of education. So you want to get that money, find the money and get the money and
Because
educate yourself.
it's there. It's
Yeah,
there.
exactly. But also, again, be strategic,
Okay.
right? We have far too many communications degrees majors, and we have to understand once you get that degree, what are your options job wise, right? Those jobs are not paying a certain amount. Also, you have to consider, will these businesses and jobs be here in the future, right?
Mm.
Can I make money in it, right? Art is great, but not necessarily for a degree. All right. So what again, looking at other communities, the Asians don't allow for their children to study fine arts most times. They make sure that they study the degrees that are important to them, to their community, to the future of the world, so that they can be the global leaders of the world. So
disciplines like what? Like what type of disciplines?
Technology, engineering, medicine, business, right? The STEM, mathematics, right? There are important industries that we have as a nation and as a globe have agreed to are going to be important going into the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Somebody said you can get a student visa and go to college abroad for free or at a very low cost, and they can be paid out of pocket from part-time work.
Exactly. That's the reason why I said that we have an entire world out here. You don't have to, if you can't afford life here in America, you might want to consider countries that are more affordable. There are countries that have free healthcare, free education.
Yeah.
Take advantage of that. Go there, come back with a degree.
And how do you feel about trade jobs? Because we're talking about investing. We're talking about now solutions to how to deal with the economic collapse. He said invest. And the first investment is in yourself. You can invest in education, whether it be go into college or you self-educate. And somebody asked, what about trade jobs?
Trades are very important, right?
Okay.
These are things that don't often go away, right? You're going to need these trades, right? Like construction and plumbing and electrician. All of these things are trades, right? Architecture. All of these things are going to be needed in the future just as much as they are needed today. Mechanics, right? Even beauticians, right? Hairstylists. Music is a trade, right? They are important. They do generate money. And
sorry.
Go ahead.
You said earlier that your dad, God rest his soul, because he's transitioned, taught you all of his kids music, and you were making an income, a nice income, starting from the age 8 or 10ish,
10 years old. I've been making money every week since I was 10 years old because my father taught us a trade, and he told us as children. He said, "You first of all, you're gonna learn." I like to say he was kind of like Joe Jackson. But in a good way. He made sure we learned our instruments.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No.
I was gonna say, but he told us, as a musician, musicians are always needed in times of economic prosperity and in times of recessions. He said, during the Great Depression, guess what? People wanted to listen to music in order to feel better about their problems. So it was a good trade, and it has proven to be, he has proven to be correct, because to this day I make money in music, and it's been 25 years. And I don't foresee it stopping. Go ahead.
And it's not going to stop, because you can pray for a church, you do weddings, funerals, graduations. You played music for Ambassador Shabazz. Mm-hmm. She would bring world-renowned entertainers to our city, and you would be there with Mali music and who else? Some of the other people, the Clark,
Dandy Glover. She, as in terms of the notoriety, she brought Danny Glover. We worked again with Muhammad Ali. Music wise, she created a choir. I was a musician for the choir. So we sang for different events, and worked with the mayor and dignitary in Louisville.
Yeah. There was something. So how to prepare? Because I've heard that during depressions and recessions, you can actually become wealthy. And it's interesting because when I was telling you about that, you said, "Mom, I want you to consider that before the depression, there was the roaring 20s." I was like, what?
Mm-hmm.
And then you said, so people were, thinking everything was going to be okay. Then there was a collapse. And the only ones that really did okay were the ones that either they prepared, or the ones that, a lot of times people that are in extreme poverty, they still live that reality. But can you talk about how before the Great Depression, there was the roaring 20s, and then lead into how we can prepare for this collapse and the depression?
Well, as you said, the 20s, everybody was excited. They felt like there was no tomorrow, right? That there was an abundance of money. That was when people were just being introduced to stocks, right? So everybody was investing in stocks and getting a good return out of it. So the times of prosperity were high and abundant,
Mm-hmm.
right? But again, nobody was predicting that things could go awry. And so when it did, everybody, that was not prepared ended up suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking pretty similar to those times, right? Where people, well, I would say people are already feeling, the problems today.
Okay.
But how do you prepare? There's obviously, again, different ways to prepare. First, educating yourself. Second, having a community that you can depend on and that can depend on you, right? Because we can't predict what is going to happen necessarily,
Mm-hmm.
but we can say whatever happens, you have to be prepared for whatever it looks like. And so you want to have multiple strategies, multiple plans. If plan A doesn't work out and plan B doesn't work out, you might want plan C and D just in the event of, right? Investing in resources, hard assets, because they gain value, right? They have a stored value and they gain value, especially in times of hyperinflation, for example, right? And in times of the collapse, these resources will have value, right? So invest in these resources so that when these times come, if they should happen to come, you have some wealth already set aside. Also, invest in food now, right? Buy food that have a long shelf life,
Okay.
right? Be strategic in the foods that you buy, right? Rice and beans go a long way, for example. Right? A lot of other countries survive on rice and beans, right? We have to learn some humility as Americans, right? We ain't gonna get the steak, you know what I'm saying? Shrimp, all of the good foods those become more expensive during times of crises. And so you want to have canned foods, canned vegetables, right? You want to have sugar and salt, right? You want to stock up in these. You want to have plenty of water. Now, again, these are things that our grandparents and great grandparents did naturally. They were prepared. Somewhere down the road, it was not taught to the children and grandchildren, or we missed it. But we got to relearn, right? Learn, unlearn, relearn.
They had
Things that,
flashlights, blankets.
yep, yep, yep. The things that we learned and did in the past, we got to turn that off. It's not going to work for the future. Some of the things that we were doing in the past will not work for the future. We have to relearn what will work. Like you said, buying the things that flashlights, blankets, learning how to grow food. Right? You oftentimes during a collapse and during a crisis, there's a food shortage. During the 1929 crash, there were food shortages. There were food lines.
Wow.
You don't want to have to be the 99th person in that line. waiting for a bowl of whatever they feed. So have food stored now, right? Have an abundance of food stored now, because we remember during the pandemic, there was a run towards everything. Stock up on your toilet paper, stock up on, don't buy one toothpaste bottle when you go to the store, you know? Don't buy just a few rolls of toilet paper now today, because when everybody is rushing to get something, that's when it's way too late.
That's true.
Yeah.
So invest in yourself, in your education, or get a trade. Hone your skills and your gifts. Travel if you can. Buy food. Buy non-perishable items. Stock up on water. Grow your food. If you want to buy food, get those non-perishable items like canned goods, rice and beans. These are things that you can do to prepare. Also, you mentioned earlier today that the Mexican community, they move all into one house. They know that sense of community. They're not too prideful to do that. And they will spend their money to buy that house, and then one person to move out. And then well, what do they do from there? Go on and just keep buying houses?
Yes. Collectively
As a unit.
Yes.
And
so that is another thing, right? Networking.
Okay, networking.
And using your community that you build and establish, using your family as a network, so that everybody involved can benefit. Right? We have to, again, we have to look at things collectively. Anything in life is going to be that much harder when you have to do it yourself, versus when you have a team that can support you. Right? And then understand that you may be the financier, the next person may be the brains, the next person might be the foot, the feet. Different people have different things that they can contribute. Don't be upset necessarily if you have to do one thing that another person can't do, because it's in fact more beneficial, right? In barter and trade, for example, if I have silk and you have silk, what are we trading? If I have coffee beans and you have sugar, we can both trade a little bit and we can drink some coffee.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So bring what you have, what your skill is, to the table, right? Network, find other people who are like-minded, right? You don't want to have to fight with people, to build, right? You want people who are like-minded. So find those people now, because when things get really bad, it's going to be harder to find these people, or could potentially be harder, we'll say. So do things now, because should it happen, it's going to come faster than most people expect. All right. Potentially. It could, but the problem is we've already been going through the slow grind of the collapse. So at a certain point, the collapse speeds up. It escalates.
Yeah.
And then things start happening suddenly.
And right? The unprepared, they will think they'll be like, where did this come from?
Exactly.
How this
we could have prices like Zimbabwe. All right. So be prepared. And that, again, these things, this is not the first time a economy collapsed, a government collapsed, a government went bankrupt, defaulted on their loans. All of these things have happened before. Study history of the times that we may be headed towards, so that you can know how to prepare.
Yeah. You also mentioned, when you talk about hard assets, investing in land, investing in silver, copper, and gold. And I hear people say, but I can't afford land. I can't afford silver. I can't afford gold. To which you would say, how?
Find things. If you can't afford it, everybody everybody's not going to make it to heaven. Sorry to say. I mean,
Mhm,
that's the what the believers believe.
mhm.
Either you're going to prepare or you're not. Either you're going to do it or you're going to have excuses as to why you cannot do it. But again, successful people get results.
Mm.
Unsuccessful people make excuses. So either you want to be successful or not. But if life hits you and you fail to produce, that is not anybody else's problem.
It's not even life's problem. Like the people, the animals in the wild that are not strong, they perish.
Yeah, or get eaten by the next one. Yeah.
The ones that didn't get the resources before winter came along, they
Mm-hmm.
perish.
They perish.
Successful people don't just say, I can't. They ask themselves, how can I?
Absolutely. And they find ways to do it. And if you can't or cannot or don't know how, again, find those who know it and who have it and who are willing to help.
Mhm.
There are people out there that are willing to help, but now you have to be willing to accept the help too. We have a lot of people who have to be a lot more humble and a lot more honest with themselves about where they are in life.
Mm. Mm. Absolutely, because you even talked about how you can buy land or a house if we humble ourselves, for those who are okay with humbling themselves, and we know that we can't survive alone. You can team up with your family members. You can team up
Mhm.
with like-minded people in the community to buy land. There are places you can go in America to buy cheap land, but a lot of us don't want to live in those places.
Mhm.
We can
Right.
live together as a family or a community, but a lot of us don't want to do that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing. You got to change your perspective.
Hmm.
Right. You have to broaden your perspective, I'll say. Look outside of whatever box that you have been in your whole life and explore other options because there's always another option. Right? There's always a solution. Every problem has a solution. And successful people find solutions to their problems. That's what business is about, is providing solutions, right? Services are solutions. Products are solutions. We have to be solution-based people.
Hmm.
Not again, America is spoiled. Unfortunately, the reality is we as Americans are spoiled. We've
Hmm.
been handed out things for so long that we think that the government is supposed to give us welfare.
Hmm.
That would be why they call it entitlement programs. We feel as Americans that we are entitled to everything and should have to do little, if not anything at all, to receive those benefits. That's not how life works. That's how life works in an empire when the empire is doing well, not when it's contracting.
Oh, okay. Somebody said
This is the
Dr.
reason
Claude.
why.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So who was
No,
that
this is the
said?
reason why. Mhm.
Go ahead, son. I'm sorry, Mr. Latimore.
This is the reason why they're talking about cutting benefits,
Okay.
right? Food stamps and Section 8 and potentially Social Security. They've been talking about this behind the scenes for at least the last 2 decades.
Mm.
But now they're making it known to the public because we cannot service our debts. Other countries are providing for America to live the lifestyle that we have. We're going to have to accept new realities. We're going to have to cut back. What were you going to say?
I was going to say somebody, you have a couple people in here that are being disrespectful. Thank you so much. Janine is in the chat. Thank you, Janine. I'm going to have to send you an email every time I go live because she's our moderator. She said, please be respectful while in the chat. Thank you. Because some people are, kind of being a little snide, smart Alex, saying this isn't new information, bro. Claude Anderson already said this, but it's true. Claude Anderson did talk about group economics, and Dexter Latimore is an economist, so they're saying the
There's
same thing.
nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. Like, what new information are we expecting in life? Like, it's not about and then what's new to you may not be new. What's new to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
My job is to share the information that I have in hopes that those who receive it find it beneficial. And if not, it's okay.
Yeah. Group economics is very important. And when you look at other communities, like you look at the Jewish community, you look at the Asian community, you look at the Mexican community, many other communities are able to survive because in their community, their dollar circulates a whole lot, many more times than ours as Americans, or even Black Americans or whatever Americans. Their dollar goes through their whole community many, many times, and then it leaves the community. So they would buy gas in their community, food in their community, hair products for their community, all of that before it leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Yeah.
And that as a group, as a collective group, we have to be working on those things. We have to be working together, right? Because either we do it or we suffer the consequences of not getting these things done.
Mm.
And the time is of the essence. As a people, we don't own much of anything. And we should probably spend less time finding the things that we disagree on and work on things that we can agree on and help each other.
Yes. Yes, we need to invest in each other, invest in ourselves. And speaking of hard assets, you were talking about land and what else you were talking about? Food. Another thing you mentioned, and I said that silver, copper, and gold. I want to say that if you cannot afford or is not in your budget, I don't want to say what you can't afford, to buy 1 ounce of gold at $4,300, you can consider jewelry. Somebody mentioned that in the comment section. You can get jewelry inexpensively from the pawn shop, from state sales. I'm sure other places, from family. If you store up jewelry that has sterling silver in it, sterling silver is 92% silver, 0.999 silver. Sterling silver is. You can get constitutional silver, also known as junk silver. Those are coins that were minted before 1964. That junk silver, they call it junk silver because they didn't want you to know it was really valuable silver, has 90% silver, 0.99 silver. Okay, you can get gold backs, also known as gold aurum notes, AURUM. Gold aurum notes or gold backs are $6 a note. I've been teaching this on my channel for years. So there are many ways you can get silver and gold. You can get lower denominations. You don't have to get a whole ounce, troy ounce. You can get half ounces, quarter ounces. You can do whatever you put your mind to do. Instead of saying, I can't, this is too much, it's not going to work, whatever, just ask yourself, how can I? You're going to say
And
something?
then, the last thing I'll say is everybody in history, everybody did not own gold and silver. And the average person was still just fine.
True.
Right. So we don't want to be overly anxious about what is to come, because people always have found ways to survive in life. Right. There's always going to be a job to do. And if there's no jobs, we're just going to have to figure something out. People are figuring out how to live without a home today.
Yeah.
And some people are accepting that as their new reality. But that's an option. But if you don't want to have that as an option, you might want to consider, preparing and working with others to where that doesn't become your reality. But again, whether things are going well in the economy, in the society, or things are being drastically changed, life is going to happen. and either we're prepared for it or we're not, but it's going to come. Like the good and the bad comes in life, and it's not always going to be good. Life is not always going to be how we want it or expect it to be. So the only thing that you can do in life is to, at best, prepare. Whatever preparations look like, it's going to be different for every person, every family. But you have to find what it looks like for you.
Yeah, and you had mentioned also when you and I were talking offline that another foreseeable option for investment is foreign currencies. Can you speak a little bit about that and why that could be a good investment?
Well, right now, today, the US dollar still does have dominance over most of the currencies of the world. So the US dollar can be used strategically to accumulate foreign currencies. Now, the foreign countries right now, as has been previously mentioned, they're buying a lot of gold. They also, a lot of these countries have gold in their grounds and oil and different minerals. So when the revaluation occurs, the reset occurs, where currencies are revalued to see how much value they truly have, those countries that you invest in, those currencies will gain value, right? So investing now is a good investment because, again, in the future, these countries have the potential, at least, to gain value by the accumulation of hard assets that their countries and governments are doing, accumulating.
So the gold that they are accumulating now will support their currencies.
Yes. We're going back to the gold standard.
Okay.
All right. The gold standard obviously has been the standard forever, for as long as we have recorded history, basically. So we entered a brief time period where currencies were not backed by gold, but we're again going right back to that time period. So with China and being the leader of the accumulation of gold, all of the countries are following that. BRICS, all of these countries are following the same path of backing their currencies with gold and other resources.
Very well said. And as a matter of fact, for those of you that are interested in buying gold, you can go to your local coin company. I take my grandchildren there all the time. Your local coin company is a good place to go because you can develop relationships with them. You can talk about the coins. You can ask them questions about the coins. You can exchange the dollar for coins. And then if you need to get cash, or even if you want the new currency that we're going to have, they call it rainbow currencies, you'll be able to trade back in your silver and gold for those currencies. So establish a relationship with your local coin company. You can Google coin shop near me or numismatics near me. That's a good place to go. If you want, something, I'm going to tell you it's going to be a little more expensive because they don't just have a spot price, but they have a premium on top of the. Oops, sorry about that. The cost of doing business. I went out for a minute. So sometimes they'll be a little higher than if you were to work with an online dealer. My affiliate is Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company. You can contact Miles Franklin Precious Metals Company at 952-929-7006 for silver and gold, or you can email them at info@milesfranklin.com and mention that Dr. Kia Pruitt referred you, so you can get the best prices in the industry, because online dealers like Miles Franklin, that's been around for almost 4 decades, can get lower prices. And you will get a better price using my name as Dr. Kia Pruitt. If you want foreign currencies, family, put in the chat which currencies people should be considering. But you can always study the countries that you're interested in and look at what type of things should they be looking at if they want to know if this is a good country to invest in. Do you know?
Look at what resources they have as a country.
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
And then look at what they're doing at, like, look at their productivity level as a country. Look
Mm,
at what they're exporting. You have to study their economy so that you know what's going on, so that you make a sound investment.
mm, okay. All right. This has been a very informative session. I'm so grateful that you took the time out of your very busy schedule as an entrepreneur and economist. Thank you for being here. Before we close, though, I want to know, what are your final words, Mr. Lattimore?
My final words is for everybody to be encouraged, right? For everybody to work together, right? Because things will get better, right? Things We're going through a tough period, but I do believe and I do know that things will get better. It's
Mhm.
going to take some time to get there, so we might want to buckle up, hold hands, you know, do a little praying, kumbaya, right? Share resources. I saw somebody mention bartering. That is very important, especially in these types of times. We're going to need to learn to barter and again work together and keep a positive attitude, because no matter what happens, we're all going to be good.
Mm,
So those are
absolutely.
my words.
I really appreciate that. Someone said earlier that Lattimore hairline is crazy, bro. They said it's common with all Lattimores.
It's a thing. It's a lot of more thing. We can't shake it. We just accept it.
Anything you want to say about your musical, talents? Anything about music you want to mention? Because that is something that you're very passionate about. Before we close.
Oh, not necessarily. I'll say that I play the piano and the guitar. Right? I've played essentially my whole life. It's exciting to be a musician, right?
Mm,
To be able to influence people positively, for people to because music has a very important influence in people's lives,
mm,
right? Music can control people even, right? We have to be careful about the music that we let into our ears,
mm,
right? Because music is a frequency, right? Everything is frequencies, right? So light, music, sound, these are frequencies. And if we allow certain frequencies into our bodies and are not careful, we can end up projecting those same frequencies without knowing, right? So
mm.
be cautious of the types of music that you listen to, right?
Okay.
But enjoy life, right? Find ways to enjoy
Mhm.
life. And the way I do that, one of the ways I do that is through my music.
Mm. Thank you so much, Dexter Latimore. Now, I mentioned that you may write a book. I know you're a creative writer, but if you were to pen a book about economics or the economic situation right now, what would that book look like? What would you discuss?
I Yeah, I'm still debating on what that's going to look like.
Okay.
Um, I will have to get with you later on to discuss that, because I'm still working out the semantics on that aspect.
Okay. Chief Mac is in the house. He wants to, Chief Mac, I sent you a link so you can come on and say hello to Dexter. He says, great live, Dexter and Kia. Do you have about 5 minutes, Dexter?
Yes.
Okay. Come on, Chief Mac. I sent you a link. The Soul family always wants to hear from the chief of the Soul tribe. So come on in and give us, some thoughts about the topic, about investing and or about how we are to prepare for this collapse. And for those of you who are interested in investing in or supporting Mr. Lattimore's work, you could kindly send him a donation to $ Dex Lattimore. That is Cash App. Let me see if I can put that on the screen. Cash App $DexLattimore. Because he is going to be writing a book, he's going to be coming on the show as a resident economist, giving us the economic forecast, giving us the geopolitical news and information, current events, and how we can prepare, because we don't want to just talk about what's happening. We want to talk about how we can live, I would say survive and thrive through whatever is going on in the world. A lot of people say, I don't want to focus on politics. I don't want to talk about it. I want to look at it. But politics actually shapes economies. Is that right?
Absolutely. And politics affects your life whether you realize or accept it or not.
Mm, mm, absolutely. Somebody say give thanks. Chief Mac, if you're going to come in, you come on in. We got about 5 more minutes left. Give God thanks in all things. Our trials only come to make us strong. Chief Mac says musical sounds are the highest frequencies and vibrations. He's also a musician.
Awesome.
Answers to 1984 is 1776. That's their handle. Says, I want a copy of that book, autographed by the author.
We'll make that happen.
Sister Janine, who is so good to the Soul family, she is the moderator of our chat, and she's been doing this for years now, says that she does it through roller skating and swimming. Okay, that's beautiful. She also said we'll be good regardless of what happens. Thank you, our doctor. Thanks to our doctor, our beautiful Dr. Pruitt. Thank you. That was so kind. Thank you, Chief Max says great live. Chief, if you're able to come on, let us know. If you're not, just send me a quick message. Let's see. You're benefiting from what we're both saying. Thank you. Thank you. Now, some people are asking questions about us being indigenous. So they're saying, are you saying that all Americans and all people are going to be blessed, or just indigenous people? I don't know why we keep getting that question, like we're not one soul family, but go ahead.
Well, you said, or ask the question again so I can answer.
Are all Americans going to benefit from the transference of wealth, or just indigenous people?
Okay, I'll first say it is speculation because we do not know for certain what is going to happen. But if I'm going to speculate, I will say that the indigenous people in this country still exist.
Yeah.
All right. They didn't kill everybody off. Right? They fabricated some information. But according to George Washington, the copper colored people are the indigenous people in this country, which we are. So now there are I would hope to have, certain benefits restored to the original people of this country. Right. And then also there are people who are not from this land who they have their wealth, as you have mentioned, stored in their nations.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But do I think that everybody is going to leave this country who's not indigenous to this country? No.
No.
All right. But certain wealth will be given to the proper heirs of that wealth.
Mm.
And so right now there's a lot of commotion going on in the world and in America. Mm-hmm. But the people in power know who the rightful heirs to this land is. Mm. So that's just, what I would say is I can't predict how it's going to happen, what it's going to look like. But the government after slavery said that they owed us at least 40 acres and a mule, so we're the first in line, I'll say. Right. The Bible talks about the last being first. And then what was it? Cat Williams said we've been last for a really long time. Right. So at some point we should be first in line to receive our endowments and our inheritance.